I've always loved punk rock. I grew up on it, right? During my high school, I was listening to hardcore punk, skate punk, pop punk, Christian punk, all of them. It's essentially how I learned to play the drums. My first band was a punk band. So it's really near and dear to my heart. I struggled though whenever I first started playing it because of the higher tempos that were involved. I found my arms always locking up because I didn't have the technique I needed to facilitate those fast grooves. Whenever we saw the grooves going up to 200 BPM and cut, or 220 BPM in cut time. That's really fast, and if you do that without good technique, you can actually hurt yourself. So this lesson is going to break out a different way to use a couple of different hand techniques and use them in conjunction with each other to come out with a very relaxed way to play a up-tempo boom chick style beat. Before we get started with the lesson, two quick things though. Number one, I want to say thank you to everybody that filled out the survey I asked you to fill out. I had like over 1,056 responses and counting in just under a day. Like, that's amazing to me. And I simply just asked you to give me some feedback, your biggest problems with practicing. Now, those of you that filled that out, or if you didn't, if you're interested in finding out when my free series Transforming Your Practice Time comes out, I put a link below. Just put your email in there. I'm not going to spam you. I'm just going to ping you with an email and say, hey, I'll let you know whenever that free series drops. That's all I'll do. But you can find that link below. The second thing is I got a question for you, and I want you to put your answer in the comment section, and that is, what is your favorite punk rock song? I'm looking forward to seeing your responses, so I got some new tunes to listen to. So hopefully we can all kind of glean some new music from each other. All right, that's enough of me yakking. Let's get to the lesson. I'll start off by saying you do not have to play fast punk rock to utilize this. You could be playing punk rock, you could be playing blast beats, you could be playing up-tempo rock. I mean, maybe you're in a polka band that just really pushes the genre. It doesn't matter. The important thing is to realize that we have different techniques. The reason we learn them is so that we don't injure ourselves, and you have different situations that call for different combinations of these techniques, okay? Before I get to breaking that out, though, I want to talk about what the beat is that I'm going to be breaking down and using to demonstrate this. And in any book, this would be a beginner type of a beat. So we have 8 notes on the right hand. We have the up beats in the left hand. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And the kick drum is going to come on 1 and 3. And then it's going to come on 2E and 4E. And I'll demonstrate that real slowly. So not a super hard groove. So I feel like all of you should be able to get it. What I want you to get from this is the techniques, and I'm going to kind of put it, I'm going to put an Aquarian super pad here so I can actually play and talk to you at the same time. So we're going to be talking about 3 different techniques. I do not have time to go in depth with all of them, but just know we're going to talk about the molar stroke, we're going to talk about the Gladstone technique or Gladstone stroke, and we're going to talk about push-pull. So they all incorporate different elements, and we're going to combine them to play very relaxed. You utilize this especially anywhere you're playing with sloshy hi-hats. That's where we really start to have trouble using a lot of the fingers from different finger techniques that we learn. So the first thing we're going to do, of course, is the molar stroke, and that's an essential stroke that any drummer should know, and it has to do with using the arm to get a whipping motion. You can do it with 8 notes, you can do it with triplets, you can do it with 4 notes. But essentially, we're using the whole arm and understanding that this whole arm has to do with getting power here. We don't just have to use this. We have an arm and we have a hand that we have these fingers that move like this. We have a wrist that moves like this, and we have an elbow, and we also have a shoulder. And so all of those can combine in different ways to come up with different strokes. So first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using a little bit of molar stroke. It's not going to be the focus. Now the second one that some of you may not be familiar with would be what's called the Gladstone technique or the Gladstone stroke. And what that is using this part of your arm, understanding that this is a lever, and using that part of your arm to get a whipping motion and to get power from a very small movement. Now the thing I want to concentrate on with this stroke is there's something called the continuous stroke, and that's where we're doing this, and whenever we have the continuous stroke, we're really just throwing the stick down almost like we're throwing a ball and catching it, and what we're doing is we're allowing the rebound to do the rest of the work instead of having to pick the stick up. And when you see someone doing a Gladstone stroke and picking it up, what they're actually doing is letting go of that stick, and they're keeping a very relaxed grip on it. So having that continual stroke stroke and having it be very relaxed is something I want you to remember during this, because we're going to use that. That's how we keep from locking up. Whenever I start playing fast tempos with just finger control, and you know the feeling of locking up. And you're sitting there playing that fast groove, and all of a sudden your fulcrum gets so tight, and the tighter it gets, the more tired your arm gets, the more tired it gets, the more tighter it gets, and it's like a vicious cycle. And then you start locking up from here all the way down, or from here all the way down. It's like just petrified wood. All of a sudden your arm just becomes this big heavy log. That's what we call locked up. It will not do what you want it to do. To avoid that, we have to play relaxed. Now, not avoiding that also leads to injuries. Anybody that's played for a long time and has had some technique issues, it leads to carpal tunnel, it leads to tendonitis, it leads to all kinds of blisters. If you find yourself getting those repeatedly, you need to look at your technique. Now, the last thing we're going to be doing is looking at this push-pull. And the idea of push-pull is where we throw the stick and we let the fingers come down and then we pull it back up. So essentially, there's a push, which is the throw, and then there's pull. And that's one way to play it. So we can play eighth notes with all of these. If we have the molar, we have Gladstone, or if we have just fingers here. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to combine them, and I want to combine the power of the molar with the relaxed nature that we have in a Gladstone stroke, as well as with the finesse that we have with the finger exercise or the push-pull. Now, in German grip, if you will, where the thumb is facing to the side, the thumbs are facing towards each other. French grip would be where they're facing up. We do have some finger motion, but it's limited. So we want to utilize that and work on that. And what we want to do is, instead of having our fulcrum be real tight right here, I'm going to let that fulcrum grow so that whenever I'm playing, I can almost let that finger go. Now don't exaggerate this, but this is just an example of how relaxed it is. That stick is really becoming just floppy in my hand. It's becoming very easy to use. I'm staying very relaxed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this continual motion going on by playing eighth notes in this very relaxed manner. And I find that, especially with what we call a boom chick beat, the punk rock beat, I find that it's easiest to do the throw on the upbeat. So 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. And you'll see that I'm real relaxed versus this, what you see people doing. All right, even some of them here, and what happens is that starts locking up. When the hi-hat's sloshy, it's very hard to use the fingers that we're accustomed to using, or even here, it's very hard to use those and stay relaxed because you're trying to dig in and you're not getting as much rebound. So in turn, your fulcrum is going to tighten up, and that's going to cause your arm to lock up. So what I want to do is I want to keep a real relaxed stroke. Now let me demonstrate that real quick and show you what that looks like. If I was playing this with just a regular fulcrum where I'm gripping right about here, it's going to start to get tighter because I'm doing all the work. So I'll show you the difference. You see that my hand's just flying. I'm using my fingers, but I'm still having to use a lot of wrist there because I'm not getting the rebound that I usually would get with a tight hi-hat. Now, if I take and I play it the other way, you'll see that my hand stays real relaxed. I'll juxtapose the two. I'll put them against each other so you can see. I'm going to stop missing my hi-hat. I love it when I teach and I'm like, I'm going to teach you how to play the drums, dropping sticks. So I'm going to demonstrate. I'm going to put them back to back. You see, one's a real choppy motion where my arms start. You can even see it in the different muscles of my forearm starts to lock up. And if you play that way for a long time, you're going to lock your arm up. Okay, so we're going to avoid that. We're going to combine the different techniques that we know. I always think it's strange when somebody asks me, "Hey, are you using molar there? Are you using Gladstone? Are you using fingers?" And I'm always like, "Well, yeah." That's kind of like when somebody's picking something up with a crane. They're like, "Are you using just the crane arm? Or are you using the engine? I'm like, "Well, I mean, they don't work without All the components have to be there, and if we understand that our arms are made up of different different moving parts and different levers, then we can utilize those as strengths. Now, the other thing I want to get at is how to play relaxed with your foot. To me, there's two different ways that you could play these doubles, or two popular ways, if you will. The first would be the slide technique, where we're sliding forward on the pedal, the heel is slightly up, and we're sliding. So it's like two positions, and we're sliding to that second position. That's one way to do it. The other way we would do it would be heel toe, where we actually have one drop and then we drop the heel. I prefer heel toe for this. The reason being is I get the power of that first initial stroke, and then I get the power of the weight of my leg dropping. A lot of times you'll hear one of those notes will almost disappear. It'll be less than the other. And I find that if I have the power of the downstroke and then the power of dropping just the weight of my leg, I get a more even stroke by doing that heel toe technique, okay? And like I said, I'm sorry I don't have time to go into all. It would take hours to break down the components of all the different techniques that I'm talking about in this lesson. But just understand, when you learn finger control, when you learn molar stroke, they're not to be used in isolation. They are to be learned, and then they're going to be put with your other tools so that you can utilize them and play in a more relaxed manner. All right, so hopefully this has helped you break down a couple techniques, see how they can be used together. If you think this will help another drummer, then push that thumbs up button and then share it with them. I would love to have that. And then don't forget to put your comments below. But whatever you do, I'll see you here in the next lesson.